Welcome to Decode Station. I'm Sarah.
Hello.
Today we're talking about a music festival that promised paradise, luxury villas, private yachts, models, celebrities, and the perfect Instagram lifestyle. But when people arrived, they found disaster tents, chaos, and one of the biggest social media scams ever created.
Yeah, we're really looking at a masterclass in engineered deception today.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, our mission is to explore the two major documentaries that chronicle this whole disaster. That's Netflix's Fyre, The Greatest Party That Never Happened, and Hulu's Fyre Fraud. We really want to decode how an event with literally zero basic infrastructure became the ultimate internet age trap.
Right, because when you dig into the sources, you realize this wasn't just a party with like a few logistical hiccups. It was a complete structural failure from top to bottom. It was built entirely on a foundation of pixels, manipulated algorithms, and wire fraud.
Exactly. I want you, the listener, to put yourself in that headspace for a second. Imagine scrolling on your phone in late 2016. You see the sudden, completely coordinated explosion of orange squares taking over your feed.
Oh, the Orange Square campaign. Just brilliant, but so deceptive.
Right. Top-tier influencers, models, musicians, they're all posting the exact same mysterious tile at the exact same time. And it links to this gorgeous promotional video of a private island in the Bahamas. Okay, let's unpack this. How did thousands of rational people hand over massive amounts of money for VIP tickets to a paradise that physically did not exist yet? I mean, it's like selling a mirage.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of trust. They were weaponizing something called a halo effect. Normally, if a brand new company claimed they were building a luxury city on a remote Bahamian island in 4 months, your consumer skepticism would kick in immediately.
Oh, for sure. I'd want blueprints or, proof of concept.
Exactly. But the marketers behind Fyre understood a vulnerability in our cognitive processing. By coordinating hundreds of recognizable influencers, people like Kendall Jenner and Bella Hadid, to post simultaneously, they didn't just bypass advertising guidelines, they actually broke the Instagram algorithm.
Wait, broke the algorithm, meaning the sheer volume of high-profile engagement essentially forced the platform to treat this unproven festival as a massive, legitimate cultural event.
Yes, precisely. It artificially manufactured consensus. When you see a dozen people you admire endorsing something, your brain just, it offloads the risk assessment. The viewer conflates the high production value of the advertisement with the physical reality of the event itself.
Wow. So because the yachts and the pristine beaches looked so real in the ad, people just assumed it was real life.
Right. The organizers weren't really selling a music festival. They were selling membership into an exclusive social class. And because the people promoting it were at the top of the digital hierarchy, the attendees subconsciously assumed the vetting process had already been handled.
Is social media essentially hacking our desire to belong? Because, we hear the term FOMO thrown around a lot, fear of missing out, but this feels infinitely more complex.
Oh, absolutely. It is the commodification of experience.
Yeah, like the marketing wasn't an ad, it was a digital flex.
Yeah.
The documentaries show how deeply entrenched this Instagram culture had become. People weren't just buying a ticket to hear a band play on a beach. They were buying a digital receipt to prove to their own followers that they belong to the cultural elite. It just shocks me how easily viral hype can fabricate reality.
And that desire to belong was violently exploited by the internet machine Fyre setup. And, heavily aided by agencies like Jerry Media, the hype became its own isolated economy.
It really did.
The marketing team engineered this digital echo chamber where questioning the logistics made you look foolish, like you simply didn't understand the vision. And more sinisterly, they actively maintained that illusion by scrubbing reality.
Oh, right, the comment deletion.
Exactly. Whenever a user commented on the Fyre Instagram page asking about flight details or housing arrangements, the social media managers systematically deleted the comments and blocked the users.
They were actively silencing the reality to protect the mirage. Which brings us to the architect of this entire distortion field, Billy McFarland.
Right, the founder.
Yeah. The sources describe him as an entrepreneur with a uniquely reckless ambition. I keep trying to figure out if he was a brilliant mastermind or just entirely delusional. Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like he was flying a plane while still building it midair, entirely fueled by hype. Was this blind ambition or calculated manipulation from day one?
Well, looking closely at his history, particularly his previous venture, Magnus's, provides a very clear behavioral pattern. The Hulu documentary goes into this deeply.
Magnus's was that card company, right?
Yeah. Magnus's was essentially a fake black card for millennials. It promised exclusive perks, but constantly failed to deliver. McFarland operated by continuously prioritizing marketing over reality. He really believed that if he could just generate enough hype, the capital would follow.
And with enough capital, he could just magically buy his way out of the physical constraints of reality at the last second.
Exactly. That was his entire operating model.
I look at his tactical approach, and it feels like Billy was basically running a digital Ponzi scheme. But instead of paying off early investors with cash, he was paying them off with social clout and viral engagement. The whole operation required constant, exponential hype just to keep from collapsing under its own weight.
That is the exact mechanism. But to sustain that Ponzi scheme of hype, McFarland had to secure real capital. And he did that through calculated, explicit fraud.
Wait, actual fraud? Like beyond just lying on social media?
Yes. He continuously fabricated financial documents. He would literally alter wire transfer screenshots to show millions of dollars in his company's bank accounts that simply didn't exist.
Yeah.
And he used those manipulated documents to secure massive loans from veteran investors.
Oh, wow. So he trapped everyone, his staff, his backers, the ticket buyers, all inside this reality distortion field powered by forged data.
Yes, completely trapped them.
But, you know, a digital Ponzi scheme has a physical deadline. The planes eventually have to land. The digital mirage was violently snapping back to physical reality, and the logistical timeline was impossible from day one. I mean, they originally claimed the festival was on Pablo Escobar's private island, Norman's Cay.
Right, until McFarland broke the strict terms of their lease.
How to do that?
By heavily advertising the Escobar connection in the promotional video. The owners had specifically asked him not to do that, so they immediately kicked Fyre off the island.
So they are suddenly scrambling, literally weeks before the event, and they end up on Great Exuma, which isn't a private island at all. It's heavily populated. But instead of admitting that, didn't they just Photoshop the map on their website?
They did. They photoshopped the map to remove the existing infrastructure and make it look like an isolated paradise. It really highlights the fundamental arrogance of treating physical engineering like software development.
Oh, that's a great point. Like
Yeah.
you can just push an update to reality.
Exactly. You can iterate code. You can patch a software bug after launch. You can even buy fake followers overnight. You absolutely cannot patch a plumbing system for thousands of people in a gravel pit.
No, you definitely cannot.
You cannot fake a food supply chain, waste management, or medical infrastructure. The moment they signed the new lease on Great Exuma, the digital promise became completely decoupled from the unyielding laws of physics.
And the result of that decoupling is the collapse. And I mean, it plays out like a surreal disaster movie. You have these attendees who paid thousands of dollars stepping off flights in the Bahamas, expecting luxury villas.
And what did they actually find?
Well, they are loaded onto yellow school buses and dropped into a disorganized construction site littered with leftover FEMA disaster tents. The mattresses are soaking wet from a massive rainstorm the night before. There is zero organization, no lighting, and people are literally fighting over lockers in the dark.
It was the physical manifestation of the system breaking down. When the attendees arrived, they were no longer dealing with a brand aesthetic. They were dealing with the harsh reality of being stranded in a foreign country without basic human necessities. The illusion shattered instantly.
And nothing captured that shattered illusion better than the infamous cheese sandwich tweet.
Ah, yes, the cheese sandwich.
A viral photo of two sad slices of processed cheese on wheat bread shoved into a styrofoam container with a handful of undressed lettuce. It was the absolute antithesis of the gourmet catering promised by celebrity chefs. But, you know, I struggle to understand the adults in the room leading up to that moment.
What do you mean?
Well, you've got veteran investors pouring millions into this. You have massive marketing agencies on site. The employees attempting to build the stage had to know the timeline was a joke. How did seasoned professionals look at a deserted gravel pit and think, yeah, we can build a luxury city here in 4 weeks? Where were the checks and balances? Why didn't a single investor, employee, or influencer pull the emergency brake?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the failure of the adults in the room comes down to a deliberate strategy of compartmentalization.
Okay, break that down for me.
McFarland specifically structured the operation so that almost no one had the full picture. The Hulu documentary really emphasizes this. The marketing team in New York was entirely isolated from the logistics team on the ground in the Bahamas. When people asked hard questions, McFarland would lie and say the other department had already solved it.
So the marketing team genuinely believed the villas were being built, and the construction team genuinely believed the event was going to be downsized.
To a degree, yes. But it goes deeper. into the psychology of the sunk cost fallacy. By the time the logistics team realized the impossibility of the task, millions of dollars had been spent. Investors had given so much capital that pulling the plug meant guaranteeing a total loss.
So they just kept going.
Right, they kept writing checks, hoping against all logic that a last-minute miracle would save their investment.
And what about the everyday employees and contractors? Why didn't anyone just stop the flights?
The momentum of the hype paralyzed them. When the most famous people in the world are posting about your project, it creates an intense psychological pressure cooker. Furthermore, McFarland used the threat of unpaid wages as a weapon.
Oh, that is so manipulative.
Very. If a contractor or an employee threatened to blow the whistle, they were told they wouldn't get paid for the months of work they had already done. The survival instinct kicked in, and people simply kept their heads down, hoping someone else would stop the train.
The heartbreaking part of that survival instinct is looking at who actually suffered the most. The public loved laughing at wealthy influencers stranded on an island, but the real victims were the local Bahamian workers.
Absolutely. The local infrastructure was devastated.
People like Marianne Roll, a local restaurant owner who worked around the clock to feed the massive construction crews when the festival's catering fell through. Billy McFarland stiffed her, and she had to drain $50,000 of her own life savings just to pay her staff. The institutional failure wasn't just an embarrassment for rich kids, it financially devastated a local economy.
And that grounds the narrative in the severe real-world consequences of digital fraud. The aftermath of Fyre Festival was a massive legal and cultural reckoning. The dust settles, the island is eventually evacuated, but the fallout was immediate. Class action lawsuits piled up in the millions.
Yeah, and the Justice Department stepped in. Billy McFarland was eventually indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud. But, the hubris is so deep that while he was out on bail, awaiting sentencing for Fyre Festival, he actually started another scam.
Yes, VIP access.
Exactly, selling fake tickets to exclusive events like the Met Gala to the exact same email list of people he had just defrauded. It's unbelievable.
It underscores the pathology of the fraudster. But the justice system ultimately responded. McFarland was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, and the ripple effects extended far beyond him.
How so?
Well, the Federal Trade Commission finally began cracking down on influencer marketing. They started subpoenaing the celebrities who posted the orange squares without disclosing they were paid advertisements. It forced an entirely new legal framework for how reality is regulated on social media platforms.
It really pulled the curtain back on the entire influencer economy. The public reaction was this massive wave of schadenfreude. People couldn't look away. It felt like a collective realization that the pristine, highly filtered lives we were being sold every day were entirely fabricated.
The public reaction is perhaps the most revealing element of our deeper analysis here. When we synthesize all the data from these documentaries, we have to look at the underlying identity crisis of the modern consumer. Why did this scam work with such unprecedented efficiency?
That's the real question, isn't it?
Yes, this raises an important question, and it worked because it preyed on a vulnerability that exists in almost everyone who participates in social media.
The desire to blur the line between observer and participant. So what does this all mean for you and me? Are we just as vulnerable to the next perfectly filtered illusion?
Precisely that. The vulnerability isn't a lack of intelligence. It is the deeply human desire to be seen, to be validated, and to secure a place within a perceived social hierarchy.
Because people didn't just want a concert, they wanted the identity that came with it.
Exactly. As long as consumers conflate their intrinsic self-worth with their digital curation, there will always be a lucrative market for people selling beautifully packaged mirages. Fyre Festival was merely the extreme physical manifestation of a psychological transaction that happens millions of times a day on our phones.
It's a completely sobering reality. We've unpacked so much of the mechanics today, starting with that coordinated drop of orange squares that broke the algorithm and weaponized the halo effect. We looked at how Jerry Media and the internet machine actively scrubbed reality to protect a digital flex.
And how Billy McFarland built a Ponzi scheme fueled by clout and forged wire transfers.
Right. We walked through the inevitable, brutal collision of fake infrastructure crashing into the unbending laws of physical logistics on Great Exuma, resulting in disaster tents and a viral cheese sandwich.
And we traced the systemic failure that allowed it to happen. The compartmentalization of teams, the sunk cost fallacy trapping investors, and the devastating financial impact on local workers like Marianne Roll. all culminating in federal prison time and a permanent shift in how we view influencer accountability.
When you look at the entire timeline, the overarching takeaway is glaring. This wasn't just a failed music festival in the Bahamas. It was the perfect scam for the social media age. It was a mirror held up to the darkest, most superficial vulnerabilities of our digital culture.
It really was.
It leaves you wondering. As you scroll through your own feeds today, looking at the perfect vacations, the perfect relationships, the perfect lives, how much of what you are striving for is real, and how much is just another beautifully packaged, empty tent waiting on a deserted beach? Stay curious. Stay skeptical.